Hello everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And today we're going to talk about a question that I came up with. And that question, Vince, is, what do you prefer format-wise for music? Singles or albums? And the larger topic here is the music industry changing. Everything's changing. We talk about this a lot with comics. Today we're going to talk about music. We don't do a lot of music stuff on this show. And I'm the first to say that I don't keep up with a lot of current, and music's not my forte as far as pop culture goes, so I only occasionally dabble in it. But I really wanted to talk about this because I recently, and this is what kind of spurred me thinking about this, somewhat recently with Weird Al's new album. Weird Al said, this is the last regular studio album I'm going to make because I don't need a label anymore. I can put out my own stuff on my own website, on YouTube, wherever, and I can put out singles. I don't have to put out, I don't have to wait 2-3 years, usually with him it's more like 3, and 3 or 4, and like have a whole set of songs to put out. Meanwhile, all these other people are putting out their parody songs and taking concepts I may have used and making it harder for me to, my stuff after a few years gets already kind of outdated. So for his model, for what he does with parodies and things, makes a lot more sense to get it out right away. But this is happening with other artists too, where people don't feel like they need albums anymore, and people aren't buying albums as much because most people listen to their music digitally. So the first question, as Vince, is do you prefer to listen to albums, or do you prefer to make a playlist with a whole bunch of different songs and just listen to it that way? And also, do you see things changing in a way that you don't like?
It's funny you should ask that, because I haven't thought about albums in a modern day in quite some time.
Oh my goodness, really?
And now when I think about albums, I'll think about stuff that came out in the past. I'll go back and I'll say, man, I really want that Rolling Stones album, or I feel like listening to that album from the Rolling Stones. But, and you know, sometimes I'll say I feel like listening to that song from the Rolling Stones, or whoever, you know, whatever. But most of the time nowadays, there's so many just one-and-dones. People who will make a song and then that's what they get famous for, and then you get so used to like the top 20 or whatever it is on iTunes, and everybody just downloads that and listens to it, and that I feel like I haven't had cause to think about things in the format of an album. So I would say that typically, if we're talking about something that is designed to be an album, I want to listen to that album. But if your album sucks and you only have one good song on it, then I only want to hear your one song. So I don't have a preference, really. I have a preference if it's like an artistic piece.
Are there not bands that you keep up with that whenever they put out a new album, you buy the album?
Ish, a little bit, sometimes. Flogging Molly, but it's not as much. Cage the Elephant, but it's not as much. And that's the thing, is that I feel like a lot of the time you'll buy an album from your favorite bands and it'll be one song, and then another song, and then another song, as opposed to at one point where they tried to make an entire experience.
Well, I think it just depends on who we're talking about, because I do think that now I will say that most of the bands that I keep up with, and I'm incredibly selective. I have very broad musical taste, but as far as the people that I actually just like have tended to keep up with, that's a short list. Otherwise, I'm with you, where it's like when somebody sends me something, here's a song you should listen to, I'll check it out, and then I might check out the band, but much of the time, as you said, it's just, this is the song I like. But with the majority of the bands that I do tend to buy an album from, if they put something out, most of them seem to try to make an artistic piece where the album has a sound. They don't always succeed, but most of the bands that I keep up with don't tend to just have, you know, a song and then a song and then a song. You know, TMBG, they might be Giants, my favorite band, attempts usually to have a sound. They like albums. They'll have a period where this is the kind of thing we want to try. This is our experience. Now, experimental bands, I think, are probably more like this than other things. But like, you know, this is the sound we want to try to do, and this is what we want this thing to sound like. And so the songs individually, many of them might be really great, but also the thing is supposed to be a piece. One of my favorite bands is Offspring. I think they attempt the same thing. So so I don't know. Like I love the album. I make my own playlists. You know, I do that. I did that when I was a kid, before we had, back in the olden days, before you could do it the way we do it now. I made mixtapes. I had the whole Star-Lord thing going on. I made mixtapes. That was one of, I've said this before, but that was one of the things that really hit me so hard with Guardians, because my mother and I made mixtapes together. So I had that same thing that Star-Lord had with his mom. And we you know, you'd take a CD or you'd take a tape, and you'd have a dual tape player, and you'd have the song going on one side, and then you record it on the other side. And yeah, you actually had to do it in real time, so you had to wait for the song to be over and then turn it off when you were finished. And it was very analog. And then I went to high school and I had to do video production the exact same way. But right. We've come a long way, yeah. So anyway, but so I do that. It is fun to make your own albums, and I enjoy. I'm meticulous about track lists. Like when I put together a playlist or a mix CD or something, I'm meticulous about what the order is. I'm trying to create a sound. I will listen to the last 15-20 seconds of one song into the first 10 seconds of the next song and see what the transition sounds like. I love it. I love the artistry of the album, and the fact that folks are less. And that folks seem to be a little bit less interested in making the album now because of the direction the business is going. It's a little sad to me. You know, I don't mean to resist change so much. I get it. I know why that's happening, but I want both.
You know, I find it difficult for me to...
Sorry, that was long-winded.
That's all right. I find it difficult to get into new bands when they've very obviously made a switch over. Like, they only have one CD available, but they've had like 3 or 4 CDs worth of... 3 or 4 albums worth of things produced. And I'm going, what the... So, just think about it. One band that I so far have religiously bought whatever they've come out with is Steam Powered Giraffe.
Steam Powered Giraffe, yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, mainly because the stuff that I like so much have actually Brian Setzer just put out a new album, and I don't have it yet.
Really? Wow.
And not like just, but like
but see, I feel like Steam Powered Giraffe tries to be thoughtful about their track order and what their discs sound like.
And sometimes I feel like they're kind of creating a loose story with like certain sections of songs within their albums. And I enjoy that stuff. And I when I get into a new band, especially a band that has a very distinctive type of sound, I want to get the album. I don't just want to hear that one song I like. You know, sure, maybe I'll skip to that song on occasion, but I want to get the album.
Or put it in a list with some other songs or something.
And there's a band out there right now that I started looking into, and they only have one CD available, but they have 3 or 4 CDs worth of stuff available. What the?
So they've just got all these songs floating out in the ether, but they've not compiled them.
Yeah, see, I think you can download that stuff on iTunes, but I want to buy the CD. That's what I want. I want the CD on my shelf. And I'm not a huge music collector, but for the bands that I support, I want
I have the same thing, and of course I've said this before. I mostly now listen to stuff on Spotify. I pay for Spotify, and then I don't have to buy as much music. And I can explore things. I can try things that I may not otherwise like, and I can go back to things that I haven't listened to in a long time, but that I don't necessarily need to actually go out and physically purchase. And it's a wonderful alternative to piracy, you know, because it's legal, and that's wonderful. So anyway, that's how I mostly listen to stuff now. But you know, Weird Al puts out an album. I feel a little bit weird not buying it. Team BG, I have the same thing. Their last albums, each of them, because I've been listening on Spotify, I've not thought to go out and actually buy them yet, and because I don't know how often I would actually use the disc. You know, I just kind of want it so that I have it, and that brings me to vinyl, because that is a big thing again, which is really cool. And you know, for collectors, it's basically okay if CDs were created because that was for a while the most modern way to listen to music, and now it's not because we're doing it digitally. But there's no reason to really go to another physical format anymore. Now what happens is we're pretty much just putting out CDs because that's the alternative for people that don't want to have to download stuff. But isn't it a lot cooler then if you're only going to buy the physical thing to collect it? If it's a record, if it's huge, if the box art is gargantuan, yes, you know? And so I'm getting to a point where I don't even want to buy CDs anymore. I want to buy vinyl, and then listen to vinyl when I feel like listening to vinyl, and listen to digital when I feel like listening to something a little bit closer to CD quality. I know people that can tell the difference. I can't tell the difference. There are people who are like, no, you can't listen to a digital because the CD quality is crisper. I don't notice it.
Yeah, me either.
So I'm not so worried about that.
Format you're using,
but there is a difference to what something sounds like on vinyl, and that can be wonderful. So it just depends on what you feel like doing. But I want to start collecting records again, and I feel like records might oddly, ironically, be the thing that keeps the album alive.
You know, I hope you're here. Here's the deal. I think
maybe I'm going too far saying that, but I think it might.
I have a question for you. I think I have an answer for it, but I'll ask you this: the idea that are we losing something by the single or the singular download, even, because there is kind of a difference.
Yes, you're right.
Are we losing something in the artistry of the album, or are we just getting kind of a new prevailing art form and the album's going to hang around? What do you think?
I think that it's sort of like print comics versus digital. If digital were to ever get cheap enough that it would that we wouldn't be doing like print comics every week, and we would just go to trades. I don't think the album ever goes away. The difference between the two things, though, is that it changes the way creators write and produce their music.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may still have some bands that love the album form the way I do, so they still write that way. But I think what happens is a lot of bands that I would love to keep doing that, or bands that I think new bands that come out that I think would write wonderfully that way, just won't write that way because it's not as cost effective, or they can't get as much of an immediate reaction from people. I mean, you're seeing a lot of YouTube model. There's a lot of people that are getting famous through, like Steam Powered Giraffe, who are getting famous through YouTube and through other online places. Well, a lot of those people,
cover bands too.
Yeah, but a lot of people that aren't doing covers because that's a little bit harder to monetize. That gets kind of slippery. But with people that are putting out original stuff and getting famous, and some people like do covers to get famous and they do their original stuff and they can monetize that stuff. What'll happen is they'll get 300, 400, 500,000 subscribers. And then they can kind of make a living on ad revenue, and all of a sudden the model is so different because they don't have to rely on people buying their albums anymore. Yeah,
so then post it and they say go to Amazon or iTunes and say buy my stuff.
But even if you don't go buy their stuff, they can still make a living on ad revenue. They wouldn't even need people to download their stuff necessarily if they're big enough, because those videos are bringing them ad revenue. You see what I'm saying? So that changes the way they write, because they're going to every week or a couple times a week or however often they do it, they're going to give you new content, and that means that they're writing songs one at a time, which changes the artistry of it. I don't mean that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that once they compile, like, say, 12 songs together, and call it an album, it's not the same thing, unless it is, because at the same time, is it possible? And this is where weird environmental influences come in. Is it possible that you could have a band that's like putting out regular content, and they're in a groove, they're in a phase, they're in a particular kind of mindset while they're doing this, just like they would be if they were doing an album, and they put out like 12 songs, and then they take a break, and then they come back after like 5 or 6 months, and they start again, and maybe during the break they just do covers or whatever, and then they're kind of like getting their artistry together. They're like trying to decide what their new sound is, or whatever it is that they're doing, right? And then they come back. Okay, so what is the difference between that and an album, really? Immediate feedback. The only difference is when you're in between songs, when you're sort of creating an album but not really creating an album. If I'm making any sense, what ends up happening is, if you read comments, if you take feedback, then you are being influenced by your fan base before you would have been influenced if you just put out an album. And so it's very interesting.
I would almost say that it would require some forethought in order to like almost accidentally create an album, because you would have to say that I want to do this type of thing for now, and I could see myself doing more stuff. So therefore, you're essentially creating planned influence upon yourself, and
I would be surprised if anybody was actually really consciously doing that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, not necessarily. I could see that somebody would do that intentionally, where they say, I want to create an album, but I want to charge somebody for every song as opposed to give you a discount on 12. So
And again, not even well, but a lot of people do that too. Where they'll charge you for each individual song, but then once they're finished, they'll put it up sort of as an album. You can get it cheaper. But again, isn't it more about ad revenue? Isn't it more? I'll put out a video of it, or someplace you can listen to it now, and then you're listening to it for free, but I'm still making money from it.
I think in some ways, I think the format's is a smart thing to do.
Yeah,
you know, you find a way to make money off of it so that you can keep making the art you want to make, and then as things go by, you can make the art that you like really want to make. You know what I mean? I think I had an overarching point here, but I'm just going to kind of teeter out.
Yeah, and so there's pros and cons to it. It makes a lot of sense for it makes a lot of sense for the artist to continue doing their work and getting the stuff out and having their artistry. But again, for somebody like me, it just means that I don't get as many albums, and I love that as an art form.
Yeah, that's the give and take. Is that the idea is that one goes down while the other comes up. But on that same note, I would like to also present the idea that we get less crappy albums and more good single songs.
Fair enough.
So
yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of bands out there that, especially if they have a label, they say, you need to make an album. You need to make between 10 and 15 songs and put them together. And then they say, okay, so they come out with 2 decent songs, and they have an album full of crap. And then you as a fan go, why did you guys even bother putting it out if you're not going to try to make something different? Why is it that I can play these 2 songs over the top of each other and they're exactly the same except for the lyrics and the placement of the lyrics?
Early Nickelback.
so like, why are you guys forcing the issue? Why not just wait until you have a different sound or a different message?
You know what that's analogous to? It's analogous to 22, 24 episode seasons of television where the overarching story that they're telling would only take 10 or 12. And so you have all these, and it still happens, but not to the degree that it used to. And it's getting better because we're having so many shows being made all together in shorter seasons to be put in a streaming place. It's about the exact same kind of thing, isn't it? Not exactly, but it's really interesting that it's for the better in a lot of ways, changing both of these things. But what I was going to say is, when you're doing a season of television like that, and it's like, I've got to fill time slots for 23, 24 episodes, and you didn't really have an ongoing story that would take that long, then you fill in, and you get kind of throwaway episodes. Or you might even have a show that is supposed to be mostly like episodic and one and done type stories, but you didn't have 24 great scripts. Maybe you had 10 good scripts, and then you had to fill in with some crappy scripts, just so that you make it more about the getting people to watch the thing or getting people to listen to the thing because of how good it is, because of how much work we put into it, as opposed to there's a slot that needs filled. That's the difference.
Which for the things that
this is much better for commercial art, right? This is how it can be both commercial and art at the same time.
Oh yes. You know what? I had a thought, but I'm going to leave it because I think that's about the best place to end this as we could possibly get. That's a nice finisher.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks as always for watching. Leave your comments. Do you like to listen to albums or singles more? Which do you prefer? And I would be interested too to know how people put together their playlists at home. That's a fascinating thing to me. By people personally, how they enjoy to listen to their music. I'd like to hear what people have to say about that. And if you have an idea about what.
Do you use headphones?
It tells you a lot about a person.
Do you use speakers? Do you drive your neighbors nuts? Do you drive your neighbor's car?
I don't have to get that in depth with it. Although if that happens, that would be interesting to know. Yeah. Well, anyway, and also if there's something that you would like us to talk about in a future video, leave your questions, your ideas in the comments. And if you want to make absolutely certain that I see those things, you can go to the contact page on our website, geekvolution.com, fill out the form there, and send us ideas for future topics. I am Captain Logan,
and I am Vince.
We'll see you again next time.